last thing you want is a very interested party who asks a basic question, and then you spend a week or 10 days gathering the information, and now all of a sudden they're not as excited. They're not following through as quickly because you gave them basically a message that you're not fanatical about this, because otherwise you would have had it ready, or you would have turned around the information in 24 hours. Now you're letting time lapse, and also the process starts to become unwieldy. So assembling materials in advance becomes critical, and you have to think about what outsiders might want. So maybe we need some industry data to be included so that they have an understanding of what are the key elements of this industry.
You're listening to the Fitness Business Podcast. We'd like to thank this month's premier podcast partner, Tribe Team Training, the global leaders in providing team training solutions to health and fitness clubs and studios around the world. Welcome everyone to our first show for Podtober 2017. Now, just in case you don't know, Podtober is all about raising awareness of podcasts as an easy to consume free resource that fitness professionals can access anytime, anywhere. And we have packed the month ahead with guests that I know are going to deliver information, education, and inspiration for every single person in our industry. Now, you know those times when things happen in your life when you've really got to stop for a second and pinch yourself just to check if they really happened? Well, interviewing today's guest was one of those moments for me, because today's fitness industry expert is Caro. Rick has been in the health club industry for 44 years as a club owner, operator, chairman of the 10th largest US club company, and as a consultant of over 3,000 assignments. Rick runs 2 major industry events and sits on boards and advisory boards of several companies serving the club industry. He wrote the financial management textbook for the industry, and he has received every award there is out there, including being the only recipient of the URSA Lifetime Achievement Award. He's known for his market analysis, club valuations, expert witness testimony, and especially for his knowledge of club finances. And today, he's going to be sharing his expertise to educate us on how to sell a club. Rick was incredibly generous and went into a lot of detail around this topic. So for the purpose of today's show, we're going to focus on 5 key questions. First of all, Rick starts by sharing his thoughts on selling a club, studio, or any type of fitness facility. Next up, we discuss why there are so few deals actually getting done in the industry. He then talks us through the 5 phases of selling a club. He answers the question, why don't clubs simply use a club business broker? And last of all, we discuss who are potential buyers. It's really important to note that today is just a portion of the entire interview, and I'm going to bring you the remainder of our chat in a later show. Now, before we get into any of that, I wanted to mention to you all a really important award that is currently open for nominations. Each year, URSA celebrates the legacy of Julie Mayne by offering the Woman Leader Award to a woman who exemplifies Julie's qualities of leadership and drive. The applications for that award are now open. Now, keep in mind the deadline for submissions is November the 10th, 2017. So if you're interested in putting forward your nomination, for more information, what you need to do is go to ursa.org/awards. And you can also jump over to the show notes for this week's show. I've put a link in there that you can click directly through. Now, we're about to transition to today's show, but first of all, I wanted to say thank you to this week's podcast partner. Tribe Team Training specializes in nothing but developing the very best team training programs available. To find out more, go to tribeteamtraining.com or click on the link in today's show notes. It's now with great pleasure that I bring you my interview with Caro. Rick, thank you so much for joining us on the Fitness Business Podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm pleased to be here, and I met you briefly, and so I've been told that this is just a wonderful way of trying to reach some people efficiently, and hopefully the people who listen are going to benefit today, and I'll be hopefully helpful to them in the future.
I am confident they are going to get so much out of our chat today. So we are absolutely so grateful for your time, Rick. And I thought we would start off the interview today, maybe discussing selling a club, a studio, or any type of fitness facility. Can you give us your thoughts around that?
Sure. I have several thoughts, but what comes to me right away is it's not easy. It's hard to find a buyer, especially hard to find two interested parties at the same time to kind of create an auction opportunity. It's just hard to sell a club and run a business at the same time, because what you don't want to do is take your eye off the ball and let your business somehow atrophy while you're trying to sell it. The other thing to note is that most club owners have never sold a business before. So this is a new activity, a new learning curve for everyone. And then the other final point is, I think it's hard to get an owner of a club or a studio to really fully commit to the sales process. It takes a while. It's really a process. And for many people, they aren't really fully committed. So they kind of put their famous toe in the water. Well, if I get an interesting offer, maybe I'll consider it. Or maybe if someone finds me at the right time, maybe I'll kind of be responsive. But to do sales well of a club really requires a full out process and a commitment to do that. And that's a real challenge.
So, Rick, do you want to tell us, or can you explain to us, why is it that so few deals are actually getting done in our industry?
Yeah, one of the things I find interesting when I talk to people in other industries or talk to professionals like lawyers, accountants, et cetera, is they often talk about how few deals get done. And there's some reasons for that. The first is that there are not many buyers amongst the largest club companies, at least in the United States. They now have determined they'd rather build new clubs than buy others. Second is that the sellers just don't know how to find potential buyers. They don't necessarily know how to approach them, but they don't know how to even start the conversation to know if someone should be screened in as a potential buyer or not. The other thing several other things come to mind, that sellers in many ways have unrealistic views of the real value of their business to a third party. And some of the businesses and the industry got shaken up by the most recent recession back in 2008 to about 2011, depending on what part of the world you were in. But that really, in some cases, meant that some of the inherent values we thought in 2007, because someone told us what our club might have been worth then, are not the same values we can get today. So part of the problem is we're living in the past, not realistic about what today's buyers are willing to pay. In addition, sellers, in many cases, make for terrible negotiators themselves. They're too emotional, they react badly. You really need a third party, and we'll talk about that today if I can later on. But one of the things that often is a reason why clubs don't sell is because the worst person to sell it is the owner himself directly. And then finally, I think sellers are not really ready and don't have a readiness factor, as I call it, to commit to a difficult and perhaps lengthy sales process. It's not clear that there's an easy way of selling, and so many people just aren't willing to go the full route, and therefore a deal doesn't get done.
Now, I believe that there are 5 phases of selling a club. Can you talk us through those?
Sure. And by the way, if it's helpful to any of your listeners, I'm happy to send a copy of that to you, and you can certainly feel free to distribute it to anyone who feels interested to want a copy.
We would appreciate that. Thank you, Rick. Yeah.
But the 5 steps, as I see it, are the following. First is to have an independent, very important, independent valuation by an expert of real club worth. Because in many cases, I said earlier, people are really and truly not current as to how people would perceive their club. And they could be off by a great margin, which means they're not going to have a satisfactory result, even if they were to engage in the process. A second phase, after you've hired the outside expert who's given you a proper grounding of what that and specific definitions of how to look at the value, the second step is to determine the price and the terms for a potential sale of the club or studio. And this would mean, what is your asking price? What would be desirable? But secondly, and most importantly, what's your bottom line? Because I love when someone says to me, well, my bottom line is $1 million. I said, so if I'm a third party trying to help make the sale for you, and someone offers me $990,000, what I'm really empowered to do is say, no, thank you. That won't be satisfactory to the owner. But if you came back and said, wait a minute, Rick, if they offer $990,000, we can certainly find a way to kind of do something to urge them to come and get over $1 million. So yes, you should engage them, et cetera. So then what I say is, so then your bottom line is not $1 million, it's 990 or some number less than that. And what they find is they're not disciplined. They kind of want it all. I'd like $1 million, but if it's 990, maybe I'll take that because it's close enough and I'm willing to deal with the fact that it's not exactly perfect. So what we need to do is discipline people to end up having an asking price and a bottom line. The third phase is the marketing of the club. You need a plan, you need tools, and you really need to talk to two audiences. Industry insiders, people who are currently involved in the industry, and outsiders, people who aren't, who might be local residents, who know the marketplace, know the club, maybe are members of the club, but could be people who are not currently in the business and therefore could be a potential buyer. A fourth phase is to assemble a long list of key materials, not just your most recent financials, but membership information, including how many people joined in my month in recent years and how many people canceled and how many people downgraded or changed categories, but pricing and your lease terms if you currently lease the property, your physical plant and equipment in detail, your marketplace, and obviously some understanding of what the demographics look like and who the competitors are, and your programs and services and what makes you unique and differentiated and what your future upsides are. It's a long list, but you want to do it all in advance of starting the process, because the last thing you want is a very interested party who asks a basic question, and then you spend a week or 10 days gathering the information, and now all of a sudden they're not as excited. They're not following through as quickly because you gave them basically a message that you're not fanatical about this, because otherwise you would have had it ready or you would have turned around the information in 24 hours. Now you're letting time lapse, and also the process starts to become unwieldy. So assembling materials in advance becomes critical. And you have to think about what outsiders might want. So maybe we need some industry data to be included so that they have an understanding of what are the key elements of this industry. And then the final step, obviously, is the process of screening out potential inquiries, negotiating with them, dealing with the whole process of letting them get access to information, finally getting contracts signed, having legal agreements, closing, and then handing off and doing the takeover of the club systematically by communicating properly to make sure you hand off your members or users, your staff to the extent that they want to retain a lot of your staff, to vendors, to the community. You want all that to go smoothly, because someone will pay more money if they think they can build on what you've created. They will pay less if they think that, in effect, they're not going to be able to take advantage of some of the positives you have, because they're going to have to start over, or you can't hand them over to them the way they'd like.
Rick, can you explain something to me? Why don't clubs simply use a club business broker?
Well, unfortunately, we'd like to, but there is no one qualified broker who can work in each of the local markets for potential buyers, both inside the industry and outside. And so as a result, one doesn't have the ability, as opposed to other industries, where someone is savvy, proven, knows how to be a broker for this particular industry, and is rich in experience that they can trade on for you to use. In addition, if we think about it for a second, we don't have that many deals going on, not many deals in one location. So there's not a lot of profitability to create a business to be a broker for a club focused person. And so it's hard for them to, in effect, dedicate themselves to being experts in the club industry and serving as a broker in your local market. So it's not surprising that there aren't people that you can easily go to. But what we do need is a local third party instead. This is a person who takes the owners out of the equation for the basic negotiation. And I'm going to elaborate on that later if we have a chance. But I think you need to have someone who's going to do the screening, who's going to, in effect, identify the key prospects, who's going to, in effect, manage the sales process, be a communicator between the potential buyer and the seller, and function, in effect, as a broker, but not be a broker.
We'll definitely come back and talk about that third party in just a minute. But first, I wanted to ask you, let's flip to the buying side. I mean, who are potential buyers?
Well, let's talk about fitness buyers. Years ago, I sold 8 clubs to 8 different buyers. And this is a long time ago, before I began my consulting career. And just to give you a flavor of whom I sold to, one was the president of my mortgage bank personally, where he and his family wanted to own a club. So the mortgage bank didn't buy it. He bought it personally for his family and put his family and the next generation into it. We sold another club to our landlord, a third one to the village where the club was located, so it became a municipal facility. A fourth to a nonprofit, the Jewish Community Center, where a particular Jewish population didn't have a recreation facility that they thought was needed. We sold another one to our nearest club competitor, who was very difficult to deal with because it wasn't clear that he was going to just take advantage of information and use it against us. So that was a very difficult negotiation. We also sold one to a combination of people, our own club manager, who became a partner with our local contractor, and then they identified an independent investor. So it was three people coming together, and we sold it to them. So this was a variety of obviously different ways you can think about who some of the buyers are. But going further, it's not just other large clubs or a local club. In fact, in some cases, selfishly, we might not want to sell to a local club because they may not be as trustworthy as we'd like and may be kind of fishing for information and not be a serious buyer. So we may actually not want to share the information, even if they sign a non-disclosure agreement and say they're not going to use the information. It could be a problem. But it could be, as I said earlier, it could be a local resident who may be a member of a club or maybe a member of another club, or it could be a case where their kids are in your club programs, or it could be a university, could be a local corporation who wants to use it as a place for their employees to exercise, could be a nonprofit. It could be one of your employees who can access substantial financial dollars. It could be a lot of different alternatives. So the key is to not just assume that it's a nearby well-financed club as your only alternative. And in many cases, that may not be your best target anyway.
We're going to leave it there for today's interview. Next time with Rick Caro, we discuss using a third party in the sales process. What are some of the challenges in selling a club? We talk about the valuation process. Rick helps us understand due diligence, and we also discuss the challenges around selling a studio. Rick has really kindly sent through a copy of the 5 phases of selling a club that he talked through with us today. So if you'd like a copy of that PDF, all you need to do is go to today's show notes at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com and you can download the PDF from there. Team Rockstar Fit is an award-winning mastermind team that helps fit pros lead happy and balanced lives. Get mentoring and support. Learn how to grow your business online with Beachbody. You can apply for a free consultation today at teamrockstarfit.com.
Get ready for this week's bonus segment, your extra injection of information, education, and inspiration to strengthen your fitness business.
As you know, we like to make sure that you are up to date with industry events that are happening right across the globe. And today I'm joined by Peter Brown, the President of Athletic Business. Thank you so much for joining us, Peter.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you, Chantel.
Now, you're here today to tell us all about the Athletic Business Show that's coming up in Florida. So can you start by telling us a little bit about the event?
Sure. Well, the Athletic Business Conference, AB Show we like to call it, is it's a conference for people that owners and operators of athletic facilities where athletes participate and train. And we've had it where this will be our 41st year. And it's going to be in Orlando, Florida, at the Orlando Convention Center on November 8th through the 11th.
So tell us, who should be attending the event?
Pretty much anybody that runs an athletic facility. Primarily, we find most of our audience is from colleges, public recreation, and Jewish community centers, WISE, and also health club owners that have substantial clubs. You know, like maybe the Atlantic Club you see in New Jersey, where they would have swimming pools, tennis courts, basketball facilities tend to go to our show as well.
And Peter, maybe give us a little bit of insight as to what people would expect to see or some of the speakers that they might expect to hear at this year's event.
Oh, sure. Well, we have pretty much almost every architectural firm that designs and renovates sport facilities will be there, as well as we have a lot of people that are in the fitness world, such as Bill McBride, Casey Conrad's been a past speaker. This year we have Chris Clausen, former CEO of Life Fitness. We also have Robert Boone, who's the head of Medical Fitness Association. So fitness is a component to our show as well. And then we also have, for example, Ruby Newell-Legner, who goes around the world speaking on fan experience and customer service. And we also have Charles Duhigg, who's a New York Times bestselling author, who's doing our keynote this year on the power of habits and how you can transform your company by just slightly improving your habits, or maybe getting rid of some of the bad ones you might have that aren't as nurturing.
Well, just this morning, I was actually reading all about that keynote. It sounds like a fantastic way to start the conference. So really great speakers that you've got lined up there, Peter. So really importantly, how does everyone go about registering for the Athletic Business Show?
Oh, they can go online at abshow.com and just click on, and the registration page is right there.
Nice and easy. That sounds great. And we will also put a direct link through our show notes. So if you head over to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com, we'll make sure that there's a link through there as well. So Peter, is there anything else that you'd like to tell us today about this year's show?
Yeah, I'd like to maybe mention a little bit about the expo. Our expo is a little bit, I would say, more broader than maybe what people see at URSA and elsewhere, because we do, focus more on larger facilities. So, in addition to all the fitness equipment companies you'll also see all the surface, the artificial turf companies, the indoor, basketball flooring companies, basketball standards, as well as all, the commercial pool facilities and components. So if you're thinking about renovating or building an athletic facility, this is a good place to start.
That sounds fantastic, Peter. I mean, that in conjunction with also earlier on, you mentioned about all of the architecture side of things. So it's very much a great opportunity if you're in that space, whether it's right now that you're thinking of starting a facility or renovating a facility, or if you think it's something perhaps that you might be doing in the next 12 months or in the near future, then obviously this is a great opportunity to go along and see everything under one roof.
Right. We have over 70,000 net square feet of, sports, athletic facility components and fitness equipment on display there. And anybody in the industry can attend the expo for free and also attend the keynote for free. that they want.
That's fantastic. Well, look, just one more time for everyone. If you are keen to go along to the Athletic Business Show, you just need to head over to www.abshow.com. I'll also put that link in today's show notes. So, Peter, thank you so much for coming on today and telling us all about the Athletic Business Show for 2017.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Precore Quickfire 5.
Dr. Bill Sakala is a Sydney-based clinical exercise physiologist who has over 25 years' experience working as a health professional and over a decade of web programming and SEO experience. Dr. Bill, welcome along to the show.
Hi, Chantal.
Now, are you ready for your Precore Quickfire 5 questions?
I'm ready.
Tell everyone, why do you do what you do?
4 things guide what I do in life. First off, I have to be helping people. My work has to be a passion, has to have a creative element to it, and it absolutely must be fun.
And what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Best piece of advice I ever received was from a cardiac rehab patient, and he was a stockbroker who told me, it's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. Think long-term, act short-term.
Good advice. What's a personal habit that helps you become better at what you do?
I like to get down in the trenches and get my hands dirty. So whether I'm working with a website or I'm doing my work as an exercise physiologist, I find that getting my hands dirty is the best way to get a comprehensive picture to see how I can do things better.
And Dr. Bill, what's one book, podcast, or blog that you would recommend and why?
For people working on their websites, I would say problogger.com is a excellent resource that has tons of great information on not just on websites, but also on monetization strategies that you can implement quite easily.
And last but not least, what will our listeners learn when they come back in next week's show?
In next week's show, I'm going to give listeners ready to implement tips for creating a website or overhauling their existing website to make sure that their site performs and gets lots of attention on Google, lots of Google love.
Well, this is going to be a hot topic, so I'm really excited to have you back next week. So first and foremost, thank you so much, Dr. Bill, for joining us today for the Precore Quickfire 5.
Great to be here.
What a sensational way to kick off Podtober 2017. Just a reminder for those of you who want to help us share and spread the podcast love, then all I'm asking is that you share your favorite 3 shows with your colleagues, your manager, or your teammates. To do that, you just head over to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com, search for the show on the homepage by guest name, then hit the share symbol to the top right of the show name to share that on Facebook or Twitter or Google. Anywhere and everywhere you like. Thank you so much in advance for being part of the FBP family and helping us celebrate Podtober. Before we finish off today, a quick reminder that all of the resources, links, and transcripts for today's show can also be found at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. Thank you so much to all of our partners for their support and to our foundation partner, Active Management. You can go to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com/active for a free business development ebook. That is everything for this week's show. I'll see you next week. In the meantime, remember what you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others.